The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens. This is who's in, who's out, and everything you need to know about this game. So, the 10-4 Steelers go and visit the 9-5 Ravens. This game will be played tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time and at the venue M&T Bank Stadium. The Steelers, they could clinch the division with a win, and the Ravens could stay alive in the AFC North, going to win it all if they win this game as well. But both teams are dealing with a lot of injuries, which will make the game even harder. But before I get more into that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, let's start off with the Steelers first on the injury front side, because they're dealing with some players and top players being injured. For example, you look at George Pickens, who missed the last 2 weeks with a hamstring injury. He will now miss his third consecutive game with the hamstring injury, being out for this week's game. Also, Deshaun Elliott, who missed last week's game with a hamstring injury, is also out for this week's game against the Ravens. And then you also look at Justin Fields with a abdominal injury, is also ruled out. Those are the 3 players who have the game status of out. But there's also other players injured on the game status front, with cornerback Dante Jackson with a back injury ruled questionable for this week's game and kind of a game time decision, alongside Larry Ogunjobi with a groin injury, who's also questionable and is a game time decision. However, the main injury was TJ Watt for this week's game. He got injured late towards the end of this past week's game against the Eagles when he was going one-on-one with Lane Johnson. He got held a little bit and then he tweaked his ankle. It was a big injury for him because we didn't know what it was at the time. Ended up just being an ankle sprain. Many people thought he may miss this week's game against the Ravens, but no. He is no longer on the injury report. He does not even have a game status. He's cleared for the game. He's ready to go for this divisional matchup. So TJ Watt is cleared, ready to go, and not out, not injured anymore. So that is the Pittsburgh Steelers injury report. Now looking at the Baltimore Ravens, they have some players with game statuses as well. You look at cornerback Jalen Amar Davis with a hamstring injury. He is ruled out for this week's game. You also look at wide receiver Nelson Agholor with a concussion. He was downgraded to out today and will not play. You also look at wide receiver Deontay Johnson. He is out for this week's game due to personal reasons. He was excused all week due to personal reasons, and he is also out for this week's game. So he's out. Wide receiver Rashad Bateman with a foot injury is also questionable. And Daniel Falele, the guard with a knee injury, is questionable as well. And outside linebacker Odafe Awe with an ankle injury is also questionable. So that is every Ravens player who has a game status for this week's game. They have players out, they have players questionable, just like the Steelers. But I would say the Steelers have it affecting their more top players. But anyway, injuries are injuries. It's late in the seasons. The team are going to deal with it, but they have to push through it. And that's what it affects both the Steelers and the Ravens. But anyway, there's a lot on the line in this week's game. So let me just go over it really quickly. Like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they beat the Ravens tomorrow, if they win over the Ravens, they win the AFC North. And it doesn't matter if they lose out the rest of the season, they win the AFC North. But if they lose this week's game against the Ravens, that means the Ravens are still alive. But if both teams end up winning out after this week game and the Steelers lose, the Steelers would still win the North. So the Ravens, they have to win this week's game against the Steelers, and they also have to have the Steelers lose another game towards the end of the season. And if they win out, they would win the division. So they still have a chance to stay alive to win the AFC North if they win this game, but it all starts tomorrow for them. So this is a big game for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, and both teams will be battling out. We all know the AFC North divisional matchups are always tight. Doesn't matter who's playing each other in the AFC North. It's always a close game, always a tough battle, and it's even always closer when it's the Steelers and Ravens. So, enough with the injuries. Let's talk about the actual game being played on the field. The Pittsburgh Steelers have beat the Ravens, like 8 out of the last 9 times, or 7 out of the last 8. One of those two, the Steelers have dominated the Ravens as of recently, and definitely dominated since Lamar Jackson has took over at quarterback for the Ravens. So the Steelers have the upper hand here, but it's not even about that. It's about creating turnovers. That's how the Pittsburgh Steelers have done it when they've played. They were creating turnovers, and they make it hard for the Ravens, always make it a gritty matchup, and then win the game late in the fourth quarter. That's the Steelers' game plan most of the time when they face the Ravens. And that's probably, once again, what's going to end up happening in this week's game if the Steelers want to win. What the Steelers are going to look to do is what they've been doing all season long. We know their identity by now. They're going to run the football, keep running it, and then do some play actions, take some deep shots, take some middle of the field shots over the course of the game after the run game. But that's what they're going to try to do first. Establish the run with Najee Harris, even though he fumbled, still give the ball to Najee Harris. And then Jalen Warren, Cordell Patterson might see some opportunities as well. And then you're going to have some flat routes to the tight ends, like Darnell Washington. They run that same play. There's some pitch toss plays the Steelers like running as well to the running backs. We're going to see some screens. And then over the course of the game, we're going to see some slants, maybe to Terrell Austin, some stick routes and things like that. And then the tight end over the middle of the field. That's basically the entire Steelers game plan, their whole offense that they run. And then keep the game close. Don't commit turnovers. And hopefully your defense commits and allows the Ravens to commit turnovers. That's basically Steelers' game plan. That's what the defense does. The defense isn't try getting to the quarterback with only a 4-man rush. They don't really blitz as much. They may send one extra person here and there, but it's really just play man-to-man or zone defense and allow your pass rushers and your main guys like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, whoever's in the game, the 4-man rush to get to the quarterback. And if they don't, then you're going to have to live with it. That's what the Steelers do. They're not going to have Minka Patrick kind of roam the field, just play the high deep safety, not allow anything over the top. That's what the Steelers do on defense and allow really just nothing past them. So the Steelers, that's their game plan. Looking at this week's game and looking at what the Ravens are going to do, the Ravens really don't run the ball as much anymore with their quarterback. Maybe in the past they've done so and they've had much success over the Steelers, not in terms of winning the game, but in terms of having Lamar Jackson run the ball. So maybe they look to do that more, especially over the middle of the field. They've always had success running up the center with Lamar Jackson. So if they do that, it may be even a bigger challenge, but they just haven't been doing that a lot. Lamar Jackson wants to throw the ball now. He doesn't really want to run the ball as much unless he has to. So the Ravens, they have some good wide receivers, but they have 3 wide receivers injured, and all 3 could miss this week's game. They still have Zay Flowers, they still have Isaiah Likely, though, Mark Andrews, so they still have players who could catch the ball and receiving threats, and they also have Lamar Jackson, and they have Derrick Henry. They want to run the ball now. They want to give the ball to Derrick Henry and then run. What is he, the second in the league in rushing? So they want to give Derrick Henry the ball. They want to kind of do some read options off of that sometimes, play action off of it, have Lamar Jackson throw it to the screens. So that's their whole offensive game plan. Their defensive game plan is basically what the Steelers do, but the Steelers' defense is much better. Ravens, their defense has not been as good as this year as it has been in the past. It seems like their offense is much more successful now than their defense. Their defense allows too much, but they want to create turnovers. That's what they want to do as a defense. So can they do it? Maybe not, because the Steelers don't really commit turnovers unless it's their fault. So the Steelers versus Ravens, that's each of the team's games plan, but this is what each team has to do to win the game as well. Stick to their identity and end up winning the game late. It's not going to be a blowout unless something weird happens and it ends up being a blowout, but more than likely it won't be a blowout. It'll be a tough game and it'll end up going to the end. So who could win the game late in the fourth quarter and may not make the mistakes that cost the team the win? So the Steelers versus the Ravens, this is going to be a big battle. Everyone watching Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is for the division for the Steelers. So they need to win this game. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Who do you believe wins this game? Do you believe the Steelers wins? Or do you believe the Ravens will win? I have a poll going on right now in the community tab. So go over to the community tab on this channel and vote for the Steelers or the Ravens. And let me know your score predictions and who do you believe will have a bigger impact in this week's game in terms of players. So That's it for me for this video, but make sure you go vote, and also let me know down in the comments below in this video as well who you think will win and your score predictions. Me personally, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this week's game and win the division, securing the AFC North. But make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports, everything covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do it, doesn't matter what it is. So stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, and until next time, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.